Is Shrek really selling us a fantasy about settling, or have we been reading it wrong the whole time? Today, we're talking about the viral debate that's dividing the internet and what the film is actually trying to tell us. TikTok creator at Amber Akilla dropped a video that sent people spiraling. Her take? Shrek 2001 isn't the heartwarming love story we've all been fed since our childhood. It's actually a cautionary tale about how women lose themselves in relationships with emotionally unavailable men. The video hit 8 million views, and suddenly everyone and their mom had opinions about a green ogre and a princess who fell in love. What started as one TikToker's interpretation of a 25-year-old DreamWorks film became a full-scale media literacy debate about what the movie actually means. The question everyone's asking now is simple but complicated. Let's talk about what exactly Amber Akilla was saying, because her argument is worth taking seriously even if we end up disagreeing with it. According to her interpretation, Fiona started the film as a princess with generational wealth, a castle, and a pet dragon. She had options. What she didn't have was freedom, which is where the tragedy supposedly begins. Trapped in a tower by her parents and cursed to transform into an ogre at night, Fiona is isolated and vulnerable. When Shrek arrives, he's not a Prince Charming figure. He's grumpy, self-absorbed, and living in a literal swamp. The creator argues that Fiona becomes emotionally dependent on Shrek because he's the first person who shows her any attention, and she mistakes that attention for love. From there, the narrative gets darker. Fiona permanently becomes an ogre, leaves her family's kingdom behind, and moves into a swamp with a man who continuously tries to escape from her and their responsibilities throughout the sequels. The TikToker painted this as a trauma bond situation, where Fiona sacrifices everything she was to fit into Shrek's life, while he refuses to grow or change for her. Add in the fact that she becomes pregnant and baby-trapped in the sequels, and suddenly the fairy tale doesn't look quite so magical anymore. It's a compelling argument, especially when you layer in modern conversations about emotional unavailability and women losing themselves in relationships. Here's where things get interesting, though. The argument falls apart pretty quickly when you actually remember what happens in the movie. This is where the media literacy part becomes crucial. Fiona wasn't cursed to be an ogre at night by Shrek. She was already an ogre. Her parents locked her in a tower because she was an ogre, and they wanted to hide that fact from the world. She spent her entire childhood being told that who she really was shouldn't exist, that her true form needed to be concealed. This isn't a small detail. This is the entire emotional core of the film. When the curse breaks and Fiona becomes an ogre permanently, she's not losing herself. She's finally becoming herself. She's choosing to stay in her true form, and that matters. More importantly, in Shrek 2, when Shrek gets the option to become human permanently, Fiona actively chooses to turn back into an ogre. She chooses this. She doesn't choose it because Shrek forces her or because she's desperate to keep him. She chooses it because being an ogre is who she is, and she refuses to hide anymore. That's not settling. That's self-acceptance. The actual theme of Shrek has never been about romantic love conquering all. It's about accepting yourself and finding someone who accepts you too. The film opens with Shrek being hunted by villagers, not because he's done anything wrong, but because he's an ogre. The entire kingdom has been conditioned to see him as a monster. Donkey is the only creature who doesn't treat him like a villain, and slowly, Fiona sees past the walls he's built around himself. She's not responsible for fixing him or changing him. She's simply present, and that presence helps him realize he doesn't have to be alone. The film works within a specific context that the viral argument conveniently ignores. Fiona wasn't escaping a palace where she was treated well. Her parents isolated her. The kingdom she's leaving behind locked her away. Lord Farquaad, the better option, literally wants to marry her to gain more land and has zero interest in her as a person. The only choice Fiona has between staying trapped in a tower, marrying a guy who sees her as property, or leaving with someone who actually cares about her is an easy one. She's not settling. She's choosing freedom. That said, there's a kernel of something real in this viral debate that's worth examining more closely. While the Amber Akilla take isn't quite right, the film does contain some genuinely cautionary elements about isolation and emotional avoidance. Shrek spends the entire first half of the movie trying to push everyone away. He's built his swamp as a sanctuary from a world that rejected him, but that sanctuary is also a prison. He's chosen loneliness as protection, and that choice has consequences. Donkey shows up and forces Shrek to confront the fact that being alone doesn't actually protect you from pain. It just amplifies it. The real cautionary message isn't about Fiona settling for Shrek. It's about how walls we build to protect ourselves can become walls that trap us. It's about how pushing people away because we're afraid of being hurt only deepens our isolation. If anything, the film is warning us against becoming like Shrek, closed off, defensive, and convinced that no one could possibly like us for who we really are. What this entire TikTok debate reveals is something interesting about how we consume media in 2026. We're reading films through the lens of contemporary relationship discourse, and sometimes that lens distorts the actual story being told. The viral video works because it's operating on real anxieties about relationships, compatibility, and women giving up their power. Those are legitimate concerns worth discussing, but they're not what Shrek is about. The film was released in 2001 as a direct parody of Disney's approach to fairy tales. It's asking us to question narratives about what women should want and what makes a good ending. That's why Shrek won the first ever Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. The filmmakers, directed by Andrew Adamson and Vicky Jenson in their directorial debuts, understood that audiences were ready for something that pushed back against the fairy tale formula. They created characters who had agency, complexity, and the ability to choose their own path. Is Shrek a cautionary tale? Not in the way at Amberakilla suggests, but maybe there's a different kind of caution worth considering. Perhaps the real warning isn't about women who love the wrong men. It's about anyone, regardless of gender, who builds walls so high that real connection becomes impossible. It's about recognizing that vulnerability isn't weakness, and that someone can love you for exactly who you are, not who you could become or what you could provide. Fiona doesn't settle for Shrek because she's lonely. She chooses Shrek because he chooses her. He stops pushing her away. He stops insisting that being an ogre is something to hide. They build something together based on acceptance rather than fear. That's not a cautionary tale about settling. That's a love story about finally being seen. This is Ladies First, watching women in movies, where we empower women by reviewing and discussing films that highlight their stories, struggles, and achievements.